I think since it's 8:33 PST time, so I think we'll go ahead and get started, and people will join us. So with that, I would like to thank everyone that joined today, and on behalf of Women in Pharma ISPE, I want to thank all the guest speakers as well as everyone that joined from all over the world in different time zones as well. And I before we get started, I also want to share some details that this is a recorded session and we will have Q&A after each presentation. So please type in your questions in the Q&A box below. And if there are any technical difficulties, please reach out to Krisha Patel via chat. She is also our Women in Pharma colleague, and she will be monitoring our chat and assisting with all the troubleshooting. And with that, before I introduce our first guest speaker, we would like to start off with a poll. And sorry. So I have just launched the poll, and the question is, are you or your company using blockchain-based solutions? And the options are design, if it's in the design POC state, pilot, production, or not using blockchain. So we'll give a few minutes to get answers. Okay. So we'll end the poll. Looks like we got 80% of votes in. So looks like 78% of our attendees are not using blockchain technology currently. We have 4% in production, and then we have a few in design and pilot stage. So thank you so much for sharing that, and it helps us understand as well of where we are. And with that said, I would like to introduce our first guest speaker. I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, Suzanne Somerville. She is the CEO of Chronicled, and she brings over 25 plus years of pharmaceutical, biotech, and supply chain experience. We're all so excited to hear from her today and really thank her for her time. And Suzanne was most recently the Vice President of Supply Chain North America for Genentech, and she is one of the founders of the MediLedger Network, established for the pharmaceutical and life sciences industry. So with that, I would like to hand it over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and thanks everyone today for the opportunity to present. The poll was really useful to understand sort of where people are in their journey, and I'd like to maybe take us up to 40,000 feet and talk about blockchain really conceptually, for people to really take away an understanding of the potential of this exciting technology on how companies do business together. Next slide.
Sorry.
So we at Chronicled have been working for the last 4 years with the life science industry to understand how we can leverage this amazing power of blockchain to help improve the way that companies do business together. We believe blockchain can be a fundamental component of a broader enterprise solution that can enable a trusted real-time industry network that now lets companies communicate directly with each other. When we think about all the effort companies do to improve their efficiencies within their four walls, we mused on what if we could open up that opportunity to drive that same type of efficiency on the processes between companies. So when we think of discussions like, is this product authentic? Are these raw materials coming from the right supplier? Was my rebate correct? These are things today that require companies to pass information between trading partners, update their own siloed systems, often doing the exact same thing in different systems. And then there's a whole set of processes to audit and, in bad cases, resolve disputes when companies are not aligned on the information that's been shared, or their systems are updated at different times, or they just have different viewpoints of what the state of a contract or affairs are. We believe blockchain as a component of this peer-to-peer network can enable a couple things. Maybe let's go to the next slide. First, it allows you to effectively almost put, we say, like your embassy behind your trading partner's firewall, so that rules that matter to you are enforced before any data or transactions come to you. It enables companies, by running the nodes themselves, to be in full control of their data and information. There no longer needs to be a third party that sits in between to do that rule enforcement or to ensure and capture all the data. Literally, companies can control and manage their own data, share it with the parties they want, and blockchain enables a portion that can take from these semi-trusted parties and really create that full trust, that everyone knows that no one can change the rules by themselves, and that the network of companies can communicate directly with each other. We believe that this has tremendous value, that all that efficiency between parties has been sort of locked between them, and all of this now can be unlocked. We've designed our solutions at Chronicled and for the MetaLedger network to be really thoughtful of that sort of future state. If you really had competitors and trading partners in a network together, what are the protections you'd have to put in place to ensure that no business intelligence is leaked? Certainly no one's going to join a network where that's of any risk. And where can we create a network that allows companies to control their own master data? Imagine, we're going to hear from GSK later today, what if GSK could control all of the product information about their products and provide a source of information to the rest of the industry real time and live that they know is coming from GSK and that no other middleman had to sit in between? There's certainly an incentive for companies like GSK to keep that master data updated and accurate, and then trading partners could trust that they are getting the latest and most reliable source of data. And imagine that. Imagine GSK puts it in their system, and all the other systems throughout the industry are automatically populated with those changes. That's really the vision of what's really exciting here. And frankly, I would say is just the beginning of what we could envision is going to grow with the fact that we can connect companies in this new way. Next slide. So the MetaLedger network is designed of nodes. And if you can imagine, companies can run nodes. We've also designed construct that solution providers can run nodes on behalf of a company. But if we take the premise of a company running their own node, let's just talk a little bit about that. They'll have access to a shared blockchain ledger, those red circles. Everyone else in the network has access to that same ledger. So as again, information I said, GSK's product information can be stored there for other companies to consume, and everyone knows that the only source of that information is GSK. We're really thoughtful about our design because by definition, all the data on that ledger is shared with everyone, assuming the rules are met to be able to post that data. So we're not going to put information there that is proprietary, like pricing, or any business intelligence that is not desirable for everyone to share with everyone. But by putting companies' identities on that blockchain ledger, we can now set up those blue squares. Those are private interfaces, private nodes that have interfaces to all the other companies that are in that network. So they can enable direct, real-time, peer-to-peer messaging as required by the solutions. And that blue line, no one has any visibility besides the two parties involved in those communications. I'll even note that Chronicled has designed these solutions with the ethos that companies' data belongs to them and no one should have access, including Chronicled. So truly a distributed, decentralized solution that becomes really powerful to solve all sorts of business problems. Next slide. But to note, blockchain is a component of a solution, and our platform combines a variety of services that we do believe strongly are going to enable enterprise innovation. We often think about the blockchain layer, but we've also enabled this confidential messaging interface using libp2p, a state-of-the-art messaging protocol that allows companies, if you can imagine, companies were designed with firewalls to send information out, but they don't want strangers coming in. So there's a review that's taking place with the companies we're working with to understand if the future actually represents this two-way communication, how can we set up with the right messaging and right structure a safe way for messages to come in and not violate companies' policies? Or how do companies' policies have to change to enable that two-way communication? libp2p actually enables connections to be made and then maintained so that you know who's communicating with you. There's also protocol primitive services, dashboard servers, network components, a whole variety in the platform. But the idea is that we can add solutions on top of this platform in the form of Docker's containers so that companies can choose which solutions they want to participate in. Maybe they don't want to participate in all of them. So it starts beginning to look a little bit like an app store on your smartphone that you pick which solutions you want to participate in, and then you add the containers and capabilities to do that, all sitting on one platform. Next slide. And the MetaLedger network is not just an idea, there are live solutions, and I think we're going to hear a little bit more about our first solution, product verification, from Greg from GSK in just a little bit. This solution enables the verification of drugs. For those maybe not as familiar, the Drug Supply Chain Security Act in the United States is requiring that all drugs returned to a wholesaler are verified before they're resold. It represents 2% or more of all drugs sold in the United States. We're super excited with SAP as a partner, Cardinal Health, other solution providers and companies who are running nodes in the network. And with participation from half of the top 10 pharma company, as well as all 3 of the major wholesalers, greater than 95% of all drugs resold in this country will be verified through the MetaLedger network. Dispensers and hospitals have requirements for verifying drugs in the event of suspect products starting this November, so we're in discussion with them as well. Super exciting that simply a barcode scan can connect you to the manufacturer and get you an answer back in less than a second. We've also gone live with our contract and chargeback solution. For those not familiar with the revenue management in the pharmaceutical industry, drugs are sold at list price to wholesalers who hold and manage the inventory for manufacturers. It's then sold on to hospitals and pharmacies at discounted prices that have been negotiated. And the difference between list price and the negotiated price is a chargeback that the wholesaler is going to ask the manufacturer back so that the wholesaler can remain whole. There are approximately 2.5 million chargebacks that take place every day in the United States. And with a 4% error rate, that represents in the neighborhood of 100,000 disputes every day because people are not aligned on the same data. They're updating their systems at different times of the week. They're using different databases to do that updating. And every manufacturer has their own unique viewpoint of who's eligible for what contracts and what pricing. And as hospitals and pharmacies continue to change, maybe a doctor moves from one practice to another, a clinic converts to a retail pharmacy, all of this affects the pricing that they're eligible for and is part of the root cause of the disputes that take place. By putting companies all in a network together, allowing manufacturers to super clearly communicate who's eligible for which of their contracts and any pricing updating, everyone actually stays on the same page. So frankly, rather than waiting until drug and money have changed hands to issue a dispute, everyone knows well ahead of time their viewpoint And if there are differences of opinion, they can be solved well before any product needs to ship. It's a super exciting solution, and certainly any additional companies who have a part in the contract and chargeback process, whether it's a manufacturer, wholesaler, or group purchasing organization or other contract entity, we'd love to talk to you about participating. Next slide. And this is just the beginning. So we've been working with industry through our working group construct for the last 4 years, and we're listening to understand what use cases make sense for a blockchain-based solution and what is of highest priority. We talked about the product verification solution. There are a lot of exciting potential solutions in the supply chain space. Again, as I mentioned, discussing with dispensers, could they benefit from verification capability that we've built? Are there opportunities for inventory transparency directly between hospitals and manufacturers to better handle drug shortages and inventory management? Suspicious order management for opioids. Would it be beneficial to have a decentralized solution that allows wholesalers to do their business without revealing that information to their competitors, and yet can put stop order requests in everyone's system when specific pharmacies have ordered their amount of drugs that is expected for their territory? By 2023, the United States law requires that there will be an electronic interoperable system to manage track and trace. We're excited to help the industry be part of that conversation. And on the top, there's a whole set of revenue management, multi-party processes with disputes and issues between them. We're starting with contract and chargebacks, but we're also excited medical surgical, so non-prescription medicine. Apparently the pain points there are 10 times as great. We can look ahead to rebates and pharmacy claims. And the real excitement comes when we start combining data. What if we can issue chargebacks at a serialized unit level? The manufacturer can know the price of the drug from the day it was sold to every transaction that takes place until it's destroyed. This could entirely eliminate revenue leakage. And finally, value-based contracts. Could we connect with insurance providers to allow information to know of a patient's outcome and compensate manufacturers based on the effectiveness of their drugs, whether it's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years that a patient stays in remission? And conversely, if manufacturers are creating drugs that provide no benefit, can they actually be not compensated in those events? It really creates an incentivization model that could really be beneficial to patients. That's all I had today, and I'm really excited to take any questions and then look forward to Greg picking up the baton and talking to us about product verification in a little bit more detail.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. It was such an insightful presentation, and thank you to all your team for doing all this work in the industry. And it was so helpful for you to also share all the different ways that we can use blockchain technology in the future. And we're definitely opening the floor for questions. So I do have some questions that are coming in that I will read out to you. Mm-hmm. One of the questions from our attendees are, with many pharma platforms, blockchain initiatives in EU and USA, how to reduce this redundant effort for the same use case? Does this further cause division in this collaboration-driven network?
It's a great question. And having participated for the last 4 years, there's two sides to this that are super critical. On one, you actually want a lot of different approaches and schools of thought, because you actually end up benefiting and learning from people having looked at a problem a different way. And we can actually ideate effectively across ideas to come back with really best solutions. So in that regard, you actually want a lot of people tackling the same problem. But you're right, at some point, there is a diminishing return. I don't know in blockchain if we're there yet. I don't think there is a dominant design that is defining exactly how everyone should do it. So I would say we probably still have a little bit more room for that ideation. One thing I'm super proud of, and I hope Greg can speak to it, is our product verification solution is not the only solution on the market. And we've worked with industry groups and industry standards to define the interoperability between different solution providers so that you're not necessarily tied to a single solution. Though I would say I believe our blockchain solution provides benefits that other solution providers don't have. But that interoperability might be part of the key to how things form in the future. And then I would say solutions that really do have superior capabilities in design will eventually emerge as, I think, the dominant designs as we really progress.
Thank you. And then we have another question saying, do you address clinical trial supply chain challenges as well as part of the solutions?
So interestingly, my background is predominantly in clinical supply chain and clinical trials. So we're aware of the problems and opportunities there. That is not a space that Chronicled is currently working, though if it would make sense for the data that could be connected to move into a clinical trial use case, we're definitely very interested and eager and would love to talk to companies about those possibilities. But I know there are some other efforts underway that are super exciting in the potential of federated learning and sharing information, sharing learnings across companies without necessarily needing to share information. And companies should definitely look to explore and participate in that work.
Thank you. And looks like we have time for 2 more questions. So one of the questions that was actually emailed to me yesterday was a question for you, and it says, you're all visionaries of blockchain applied capabilities. Where do you feel the upper limits of the technology are? What is one far out outcome on your wish list?
So I'll leave you guys with the idea we often talk about. I actually think blockchain, and at least the way we've architected a blockchain node, can enable for the enterprise what your smartphone was for you personally. The ability to communicate with any other party in the network, peer-to-peer, and the ability to select from applications that are built for that platform. I bring up that analogy because I think all of us can very easily relate to our smartphones that, frankly, we didn't know we needed 10 years, even more than 10 years ago now, and now can't live without. I often joke, right? I can find my teenage son in less than 20 seconds using Find My Friend. It's an amazingly satisfactory solution to not constantly call him and bother him, but I never knew I needed that capability because I never knew it was even possible. So I actually think if you put that same lens onto the enterprise, not just will we fix inefficiencies in the way we do business today, I think we're going to figure out whole new ways to do business that we never even dreamed of because it was never possible before. So I don't have a specific answer. I don't know if I need to find Greg at GSK in 20 seconds. And I don't think Greg is going to give me access to his location, but who knows? I think really the sky is the limit. If you put those sort of base parameters in place, how will we design different ways of doing business in the future?
Thank you. Thank you so much for your analogy as well. Very helpful. So I think we have time for one more question, and the question is for DSCSA 2023, how might blockchain help with tracking the current status of a serial number to avoid issues with many participant systems trying to align? For example, a stolen status.
Yeah. So I know that the product verification solutions is already looking at some of these statuses to be able to communicate those even today. Maybe Greg can speak a little bit to that. I think in the future, at least our review with the industry is, frankly, the information about where drugs goes is actually quite valuable. So the way we're approaching it is not to reveal all that information, but as drugs change hand, to check against the blockchain that the transaction is valid, coming from the rightful owner of that box of medicine at that moment in time, being received by the rightful recipient. And so that when it gets to a hospital doesn't get to see all the information of where it was. Again, that's super valuable, but they get a green check that all the steps were followed so that they know that the drug is legitimate and has been handled appropriately. Certainly it allows the querying, especially for specific reason codes like stolen, to alert a party immediately that something bad has happened, or alert a party immediately, this is being sold to you by someone who's not the rightful owner of this box of medicine. Those types of alerts could be super helpful to, if you look at it simplistically, to rapidly address issues that happen. But the actual byproduct is it'll stop the bad things from happening, because the bad guys will know that the controls are in place, that they're not going to get very far by trying to do illicit behavior. So it would actually stifle the behavior before it even happened, because frankly, very quickly it would become clear that nothing could permeate past it. So I think still to be seen exactly how that will be enacted, but all of that becomes completely possible with blockchain-based solutions like the ones that we're pursuing.
Thank you. And we are so appreciative of your time, and it's really helped us deepen our knowledge and understanding of blockchain technology in the life sciences. So thank you so much for sharing all the examples and MediLedger project with us. And now we will have our guest speaker, Greg Gorniak, share GlaxoSmithKline's success story with blockchain technology and the MediLedger project. Greg is the US serialization lead for GSK, leading work on the US DSCA Saleable Returns project. Greg has over 20 years of experience in multiple leadership and senior data roles in the pharma, finance, and software industries. Greg has a passion for data systems and business processes. So we are really looking forward for you, Greg, to share your experience and project with us. So over to you.
Sure. Thank you for that introduction. And for the next 20 minutes or so, I get to geek out with everybody about data and blockchain solutions and how this is going to work. And I think I have control. Just let me check. You see it?
It says I'm waiting for you to control the screen.
Okay, mine says I can control.
Okay.
Hold on, show me.
Yes.
Does it work now?
Yes, it's
there we go. Look at that, beautiful. Well, there's my lovely headshot. So there you go. But I'll start with thank you for that intro. So Greg Gorniak, again, like you said, I'm the serialization lead for the United States for GlaxoSmithKline, based out of Philadelphia. And as you will see, I want to congratulate my Dallas Stars team for making the Stanley Cup final. I'm a big hockey fan. So as you can see, I am sporting the tie as well, not to be dressed up, but to support my hockey team. So we'll see how they do next week when the Stanley Cup finals start. So, but you can read through that later. So we'll go through. So again, my specific role is really around supporting all the needs to meet the DSCSA requirements. So you heard Suzanne speak before on the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. And the first piece that we were in for that currently was for the saleable returns piece, right? And then the final piece of the DSCSA is in November of 2023, when we have to go with a full track and trace capable environment. So this slide just shows you the timeline for those that aren't involved with the DSCSA and don't know what it is. It was enacted back in 2013 as part of the Drug Supply Quality Act. And the first piece here was back in January 15, was just that manufacturers had to be able to electronically send transaction data files to downstream partners like wholesalers. Then the other ones that, jumped a little too far here. So the next one that came in then was in 2017, all products had to be serialized. And what that means is that it had to have a 2D barcode on it, as well as human readable information, like the serial number, the expiration date, the batch or lot number that was produced for, and the global trade item number, or what we call a GTIN. So all of that had to be actually on every box or product that was produced and sent out into let's say the environment, into the network. And that was completed in 2018 as a year enforcement discretion was granted by the FDA, as everyone kind of caught up and got up to speed with that. So then finally, the next piece was, you'll see there in November of 2019, was our saleable returns. And I'll get into that on the next slide, and then what that is, and what we've done with that at GSK. And again, that was also given another year of enforcement discretion for the FDA, luckily, to give everybody an extra year to get everything together, get their solutions together, And that will be, again, we're coming up to that deadline in November of this year. And then you'll see at the end there in the final step in 4 years from now or 3 years from now is the final track and trace fully enabled environment. So is this still working? Yes, there we go. So you might say, again, so why do we need this for returns and what are saleable returns within the pharmaceutical supply chain? So you can see here, this is an overall slide from the HDA, the Healthcare Distribution Alliance, which did some inventory back in 2014 and 15, and some of these might be even larger from now. But as Suzanne stated before, 2 to 3% of product in the market is returned from a customer like a pharmacy, like a Walgreens or a CVS, to a wholesaler like AmerisourceBergen, McKesson, Cardinal, or any other wholesaler in the industry. It equates to about 58 million plus units. That's the 2 to 3%. So a lot of product is returned to a wholesaler, and then they do a visual inspection. They do a QA check on it to make sure that it does pass that inspection, and it can be resold into the market because we don't want to take product back and have it destroyed when it could be good product. And you can see that, you know, a single DC for a day could have up to 4,500 units in one day that they have to now, you know, sort through, and make sure that they're authentic product, let's say. So part of the DSCSA, what this compliance legislation enabled in 2019 is this whole part of product authenticity. So they have to now scan the 2D barcode, and it has to authenticate against the data that the manufacturer, like GSK, we've put out into, let's say, the market or into a repository. And that's where we get into why I'm talking here with about blockchain and partnering up in the MediLedger network and how we do this. So let's see how this goes. So just quickly, I'm going to touch on, this is a very simple animated slide, which I'm going to walk you through the verification process and what we do to just give you some background of how it works. So again, we're GSK over here. We manufacture pharmaceutical products and vaccines. So when we manufacture a product, there's two different lanes. The physical product up top gets shipped to a wholesaler. The actual data will go to the bottom and it gets stored in a repository. In this case, our solution that we went with at GSK is an SAP-based blockchain solution, but similar to the product verification solution that Chronicle has as well. There are other players in the market, and this is where you'll see where it can get cloudy and where it's going to make sense on the next slide. But our data sits out there, and there's 4 product identifiers. So there's 4 data elements. Like I said before, it's that GTIN, it's the expiration date, the lot number, and the serial number. So that sits out there. So then the wholesaler will sell that product, you know, continuing on to a customer. So they now sell and ship to, let's say it's CVS. So CVS sells it, and they go, oh, let's say somebody fat fingered in, you know, 1,000 units when it should have been 100. So they go, I need to ship some back. I didn't need that many. So they ship some back, and there's a small box gets shipped back to the wholesaler. Upon receipt of that shipment, that wholesaler has to then scan each individual product that comes in. So 900 scans are going to come in on that one. So when they scan that barcode, it then authenticates against this blockchain-based directory or repository that we have our data stored in for those 4 product identifiers to see if what's on the box matches what is in the repository. If it matches, a response will go back that says it's true, or you get a green check, whatever he says, and it gets sent back to the wholesaler and says, hey, that's a good product, thumbs up, you may resell it. GSK also gets it. We have a log that we track of every scan that comes in. If they get a true, they can resell it. So they ship it on to Walgreens or some other customer that needs that product. It keeps good product in the supply chain to patients that need it. And it's also maintaining safety. So we know that that product was authenticated as good GSK product. We know it was ours. We produced it. However, there are going to be those times when something may not match, right? Let's say the expiration date didn't match, right? The month was off between what was in the database and what was actually printed either in the 2D data matrix or the human readable on the product itself. When those cases, the wholesaler will then quarantine that product and open an investigation back with the manufacturer, in this case, GSK. And then we will work with the wholesaler to figure out, you know, what happened, right? Is there something within the data that went wrong? Is it, you know, we'll have pictures of the product. Does it look like something that we actually produced? and we'll try to figure out, is it counterfeit, or is it something that we can investigate and figure out whether it's good or not, and whether it needs to be returned to GSK and destroyed, or you can actually put it back into the market. So simple verification process, just to explain what we are doing. Then the deeper level of that, for those that really like more architecture diagrams, is to see this. Same kind of slide, or if you go through the verification process from left to right, right? So we're in the upper left, we are GSK, we're the manufacturer. Those physical products get shipped out, and then if you follow it down, you have, the blue box. The blue box for us, right, is SAP. That's the solution we went with. And one of the reasons why I will say why we went with SAP is because at the time when we were going through our RFPs of looking at a solution, SAP had already partnered with Chronicle and had a contract to be in the MediLedger network. So that was a huge win for us. When we were exploring how this would work, we knew that by using a solution that was already in the MediLedger network was a huge plus for us. And I don't think I have a pointer to go through, but if you, again, follow over to the right, you'll see in purple the wholesaler again, like an ABC or McKesson or a Cardinal or any other wholesaler out there. You can see those products and data shipped to the pharmacy and then come back. And the verification request, and why this is such a big deal, was that if you were to take out that MediLedger box, that gray box in the middle, was the part when we started this journey a couple of years back. It was, how do we have people or allow people into a repository, whether it would be internal to our firewall, into GSK's four walls, when we have 200 wholesalers that we're going to have to deal with, and there's, I think, 500 manufacturers, 600 manufacturers. You'd run out of time. You'll never have time to make point-to-point connections with all of those customers. But then it's okay that we figured out, okay, well, if we have an external repository like SAP that can house this data, but then how do you also get SAP to not have to make those point-to-point connections? And that's where MediLedger came in. So I call them the orchestrators, or the conductor, which is why I have this conductor in there. So basically, the MediLedger directory is a blockchain that stores our GTINs, our trade item numbers, with links to all the different customers' GTINs and who their blockchain solutions are that are in this VRS, which is a verification router service. So if you are an SAP customer like GSK, a request comes in from a wholesaler, the purple line. It knows the GTIN, because the GTIN is one of the product identifiers within the scan. And it knows, oh, that's a GSK GTIN, because within the GTIN, it has a code as to what company it is. And then the MediLedger directory says, well, GSK is an SAP customer. Go out to that node and verify the data. That's over in the orange there. Sends a response back. Through that MediLedger network, it knows who the requester was and sends the response back to the correct requester. So they orchestrate all of this product or product requests that are coming in every day. And you're talking, once we get up to pure volume, thousands upon thousands a day. And these need to be answered in sub-second timeframes, because somebody is sitting at a distribution center, at a wholesaler with a product in their hand. They scan it. They need to see a response. And all of this has been happening now with sub-second responses. We are in production now currently. We've been using this successfully, but we couldn't do it without MediLedger within this network, because, like I said, they are the linchpin to this whole piece. And like you saw in Suzanne's earlier slide, over 95% of industry, let's say, product or requests are flowing through this network, and it worked very well. So we have been very successful in making this work. There have been some downfalls, but it's been more on, let's say, the manufacturer side, because it's not going to work if the data is not there. So the important part on the far left, with that batch data dotted line in black going down into our VRS repository, right? If the data is not there, you're going to return a false response. And that's always been the worry in the industry, is that if people aren't ensuring that their data is there to verify against, well, you're just going to get false responses all over the place. So that's really been what we've been trying to pitch to the industry, is that the solution itself works, right? It's been set up, it's been put through the paces. We've been working with MediLedger since I think it was April of 2019 to go through testing to make sure this worked in a staging environment, and then putting it into production last year. late last year in 2019, and now pushing it through this year. We've been using it since late February. GSK, we've been pushing product through and verifications through, and being able to answer to every request. So it's an excellent solution. It was a lot of fun building it with the players in the industry. You know, there's a lot we can talk more about. Sorry, one slide ahead too far. But just in terms of the solution providers and the partnering that's been done with this, and looking how it worked. Luckily, again, for myself and GSK, I didn't have to build a blockchain solution. Luckily there's people like SAP and Chronicled and other groups that knew how to build this, but it's really been beneficial, and it's going to help us meet, or it is helping us meet, the compliance requirement of the DSCSA, sorry. And moving forward with a track and trace environment, this whole blockchain platform and solution is already taking us to that next step of being able to fully serialize and go full track and trace as we go into the next 3-4 years. So that was all I had really to show for our success with the saleable returns piece of the DSCSA and our work with MediLedger and SAP. I'll open it for questions.
Thank you so much, Greg. And it was a really nice visual presentation, and thank you for explaining the verification process and the statistics on saleable returns. And the flow diagram really helps understand the MediLedger network as well as SAP and the partnerships that GSK has and how it all ties in together. So thank you. And I'm sure we'll have some questions, so I will open that up. So our first question is, what would be the performance latency on this flow?
So are you looking for, I guess, looking at the average time we've seen in responses to get them back?
Yeah, I think that's.
I'm just trying to see. Yeah. So we're seeing everything in a sub-second response. In the beginning, there were some when we were testing, we saw some get queued up, but I think that was when we were actually in a staging environment and we were loading a lot of data. So there is, again, there's a lot of crunch on these different environments and these databases, as companies have to continuously load data into the blockchain as well as then being having requests come through and verifying against them. But really everything's been sub-second, or within 2 seconds. We haven't seen anything that's really been in production anyway, that's really sat out there for longer than that.
Can I chime in a little?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to add that it might help folks in the audience realize that the actual verification is not needing to interact with the blockchain. Greg is right. The loading of the information on the blockchain, there's some, I would say, brief latency there. But the peer-to-peer messaging that the solution was built with is as fast as the internet. So depends if your server is sitting on the East Coast, West Coast, France, who knows where in the world, is really becomes a limitation to how fast those responses will take place.
Yeah, and our biggest key is that I don't mind, like Suzanne just said, I don't mind that it takes maybe longer to load our data. I know it's going to get loaded. It's more about the response time of an actual request and seeing, and that's, I'm sure, what the wholesalers care about too, right? They want that, they need that sub-second response time because they're doing so many at one time.
Thank you. And the next question we have is, do you have to track temperature in the reverse legs? How does temperature data play in with this process? And do you see further compliance requirements tying in with this type of requirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really, cold chain products like that with the temp tags and everything have not really been, I would say, fully vetted or put into this. I know for GSK, I think temp tags, or if it's a cold chain product, it actually is not part of, or not in scope for saleable returns. I think it just gets returned. And the product is then refunded and destroyed, because we haven't been able to track, I guess, a solution that would track the temperature yet in a full like track and trace environment. But I think as this progresses into 2023 with track and trace, my gut is that you'll see more requirements around that with cold chain products, and having to see if we can keep those in the industry, as long as you can have a record of making sure that product was again stored at the right temperature throughout its life cycle.
Thank you. And we do have another question, and the question is, what are some best practices to implement blockchain from the manufacturer's perspective?
Yeah, so the biggest piece, like, so for me, like what we had done at GSK was, the first thing is, when you're implementing blockchain, you have to understand it can be a whole new set of standards. So we work very heavily with GS1, and within the industry, GS1 standards have really helped us set up everything, because it's not going to work without a set of standards, right? And we even talked, I think earlier, Suzanne was saying, or there was a question around like the stolen status. So again, when you look at those even statuses of product, as an industry, it's been very collaborative, and everyone's been working together in building this environment, this network. But without a company like GS1 to have standards, that's the first thing. So it's I would say getting involved with GS1 and seeing how GS1 has handled or come up. They have a course, I think, even for like DSCSA compatibility. You can be certified in a GS1 standard. But then it's more just educating and looking at then how your own shops and sites handle data, and do you have that, and looking at talking to people in the industry and seeing what solutions are available and out there and how they work. Meeting with people like Chronicled, and just having sit downs with them. So, and seeing what the solutions are, joining other consortiums that are out there, and just being a fly on the wall and seeing what's out there is really key in learning how these things work. And then you take that back to your own house and see, how will that fit, and then looking at how you could build that. And the biggest thing too is becoming, and I wrote this down earlier, and I said this once at a blockchain group that we were at up in Boston, is one of the biggest things is that when you do take that back, if you're looking into something like this, is that you really need to be the blockchain advocate at your shop, right? And there's a lot, and I saw the poll earlier on, for GSK, this was the first blockchain-based solution that we implemented at GSK globally. So, it was great for our group to get it in and get it in production and have it work. There's an internal group that we have, which is it's a blockchain-based group that meets every month. And we go through all the POCs of, work that people are doing in all different areas of GSK, not just manufacturing or supply chain, about how blockchain would work. But you really need to be the advocate too. So when you're looking at, the technical aspects of how it's going to work and how you're going to get everything set up, it's also that you have to sell it to your company or your business that this is something that we should be looking at, because you want to look at the benefits that you can reap, or whatever it is, but you need to be the advocate for blockchain. And I think that will help, it'll just help you further on.
Thank you. And that's really great feedback, and especially just sharing the blockchain community and getting involved and advocating as well. And after the success story shared, one of the questions is, does GSK plan to implement blockchain technology for other use cases?
Yes, we definitely do. We are looking at the contracts and chargebacks that Suzanne mentioned earlier. So we've been looking at that. We've been looking at the hospital live dispenser inventory. But yes, there's many, many solutions that we've been actually playing with. And like I said, as part of that monthly blockchain work group that I'm involved in as well, it's interesting to see because what the other projects that are being worked on and what people think. But the largest part is, like I said, is it's hard to I don't want to say sell it, but it's hard to convince somebody when you're going and you're showing them blockchain because they're like, we already have, we have data repositories. We don't need, I have an Oracle database that's already storing everything. Why do I need to do something different? So you definitely need to look at and show somebody the benefits you can get, out of it when you're using something like blockchain.
Thank you. And I think we do have one question on chat as well. At GSK, have the benefits of using blockchain instead of the traditional model been realized? And I think you've touched on that a little bit, but if you have anything more to share on that question, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the benefits so far for us have been being able to actually really quickly and easily implement a blockchain-based solution like the SAP VRS hooked into the MediLedger network and being able to really get up and running. To me, it was one of the quickest projects I've been on, from starting it to researching it to getting it implemented and actually start running it. It was in a handful of months. You would think it would take years to get something like this implemented, and it was very quick to get it implemented, and then to see that GSK is able to be DSCSA compliant as quickly as we did. So to be able to do that, that's a huge benefit as well. And the cost savings, we were able to, you don't have to keep a project team around. So you look at the cost savings of that. So.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it really helps having a real life example, and especially with the MediLedger network and GSK working together, and for you to share your story of this as well. I think it's very value added to our audience as well, and companies that want to implement blockchain. So I think that
Sure.
they can really leverage your experience as well.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm sure there's things I left out, but
No, it was great.
great
It was
success
very
so far.
visual. And if the technology allows me to start our poll number 2, before we get started on our guest speakers for our third segment, we do have a poll. So I'm going to launch that poll. Okay, our question is, for GXP use cases, do you think that blockchain needs to be validated? So we'll give a minute for our answers to come in. And I'm sorry if there's any lag. I'm in Seattle, so with the fires, the internet is a little slow, so I'm trying my best. So my apologies if there's any lag. Okay, we'll give 30 seconds. All right. So I will share these results with everyone, and looks like 88% of our audience thinks that for GXP use cases, blockchain needs to be validated. And it's great to hear the responses as well. And this is a perfect segue into introducing our guest speakers, Edgar Roeder and Justin Dubinsky. Edgar is in Germany, and he's sharing this evening with us. Edgar is a senior consultant for NNIT in Digital Assurance Europe, and he has 30 plus years of IT experience. And since 2004, he's advised companies in the life sciences industry on validation of computerized systems and the compliant operation of IT infrastructure. Edgar leads several professional associations within ISPE and GAMP, and in 2018, Edgar founded the local blockchain validation special interest group of the GAMP Doc Forum. And I would also like to introduce Justin. Justin Dubinsky is based in Seattle, and he's a partner at Ashoria, and he has over 10 years of leading projects experience with computerized systems, automation, and equipment validation in the FDA-regulated environments. He's also built data integrity and remediation programs for clients worldwide, and also a very active member of ISPE. So before we get started, I do have a full disclaimer that Edgar and Justin will be engaging in a fun, interactive banter about common misconceptions in blockchain. Justin is going to be playing the part of someone that is very curious but a little apprehensive about blockchain, and Edgar will be our voice of reason and blockchain SME. So I just had to put that out there that no one thinks that they're arguing. This is a staged presentation. So
thank you, Sonia. And yeah, before we get started, I just we're hoping that this the perspective, or at least the perspective I'm taking, might resonate with either people who were unfamiliar with blockchain before this webinar, or maybe on the fence due to some existing negative preconceptions about blockchain. But without further ado, so Edgar, I'm always hearing people talk about this blockchain thing. Isn't that the Bitcoin? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, of course, blockchain, that's also Bitcoin. Bitcoin is started, and this was the money of the criminal people going around the internet. It started out this way, and it shows also one of the basic principles. The blockchain is a network of trust, so you can create transactions between parties that don't trust each others, like those criminals, somebody buying illegal weapons or some drugs like heroin and so on, and somebody else wanting to get this, sell this, but to somebody, who also pays it. And blockchain allowed them to do secure transaction without a trusted third party in the middle. So they had good reason to not have some third party involved in this. The fewer people, the better the results here in this area. And yeah, blockchain started this way, but now blockchain has matured, and we see applications in all areas, in finance, where things are transacted over the blockchain. So the first animation, and I go back to show it again. If I am able to, you see this linking of blocks in a chain. That's basically one of the features. You have a fingerprint of your data put in the following block in the chain, which just allows you to link this all together. And each block, every following block contains data from the previous block, contains this fingerprint of information. So it is very hard, for example, here to change the blue block, since the information from the blue block is contained in the violet block as well. And as this block also is a part of the next one and the next and the next, if you want to change some information here in this blue block on the left, you have to go all the way through the chain and change all the following blocks, because they contain the information from the previous one, and this information change would change the fingerprint, and you have this kind of tamper-proof recording in the blockchain that allows you to trust that information which you put in somewhere in the middle is always secured by information added at the end.
So wait. I'm not sure I really get it, but you're trying to tell me that, blockchain technology can be used in more than just Bitcoin, that it's not just an internet vaporware used to buy drugs and weapons and things of that sort? Are you trying to say that, maybe we could even use it in like the life sciences industries as well?
Yeah, we have seen the examples in the previous two thirds of this webinar. Blockchain is a solution for the problem. I want to do data exchange or value exchange with somebody together with other people whom I do not really trust that they handle my data well, that they that they cooperate in a special way. So this blockchain solution, I can have multiple people join together, like multiple pharmaceutical companies having one problem, and putting their data on this blockchain, but in a secure way, so that the competitor is not able to, for example, compile, how many products of GSK are returned. Maybe their product is not as good as they advertise. No, this information remains still private, but also you can trade on this blockchain, this information, and it's secured by means of cryptography, by means of this linking together of the blocks. And yeah, that's basically the way it is there was the blockchain. So you have data also distributed along many computers. So you have also resiliency. In this image, you see, yeah, the computers are linked together, and if at one point in time the blockchain is enlarged by a new block, this information is then communicated over all these communication lines to every other connected computer, and they transfer the information, and they all get a common vision of what is in this database, in this blockchain database at any given point in time. So if the information is distributed, there is no single point of failure.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess just a little bit of background about myself, So my background here is in computer system validation, and I'm used to seeing either centrally administered systems or even more recently cloud-based systems. But with a distributed ledger like you're showing me here at blockchain, how do you show that you have an appropriate level of control over your system?
Yeah, there are several challenges here. One of the challenges is, of course, when I wanted to validate this system, this computerized system, I'm not talking only about one computer sitting on my desk in front of me running an application, but here in the blockchain, we have multiple computers connected in a network running my application, and they do it together, and they have to do it together. So in order to do the validation or qualification of this, I have to try to slice it up in manageable parts, this big problem of how to validate the blockchain. I have another picture here. This is how we imagine this blockchain-based system, like a computerized system, which is in validation handled. And it's not only the system itself, the hardware, the software, but it's also the processes controlled in the system. And we have a similar picture here for the blockchain. We have the hardware on the lower part of the picture, and we have the processes here on top. We have some more information here in the middle. This blockchain is composed of several components, and we need to find a way to treat them in our validation or qualification process. ISPE GAMP shows us a way how to do this. We have seen the validation qualification division. So we can say everything what is below a certain level can be treated as layered system, standard system. It has lower risk. It is more elaborated in the industries, it's more tested. So we can rely more on this functioning correctly. So the validation or the qualification of these lower levels is easier. We have only to assure that this is a mature system. So how do we ensure this? There is, of course, more complications to this. We have open source systems. We have no single manufacturer. For blockchain, we can go to Chronicle, but Chronicle, they are not doing that blockchain. They are also using blockchain. They are the brokers, they use blockchain for their application sitting on top of this. So we have the blockchain, we have the data within the blockchain and off the blockchain. We have communication processes running in the blockchain. We have something called the consensus that people, that the communicating partners arrive at a common vision. How is data distributed from one node to the next node? And if they disagree, how are these conflicts settled? We have the processes sitting on top of this, these processes, like how is the communication handled? How is the data stored? How is the consensus treated? And then we have high-level concepts sitting on top of this. We have the ledger. So the blockchain is recording a status of something at a given point in time. It has code sitting on top of it. That's those famous contracts which we use, distributed contracts, which we use on top of blockchains. They have applications sitting on top. That's like this app store Suzanne mentioned before. And all this is distributed along, in a large network. In Bitcoin, we are talking about 10,000 of nodes. With Chronicle, we have far less than this. And this builds the trust in the network. We can rely on this, and we need, in the validation, we need to handle each in turn, each composing building block in turn.
So what you're saying is that we could potentially use existing validation techniques to kind of tackle this new concept to us, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, or is that accurate?
Yes, for the infrastructure, we have a GAMP good practice guide on infrastructure. They have similar pictures. Here, the labels are network, passive components, active network components, like a firewall. We have on top of this, we have physical hardware running probably some hypervisor system and some virtual machines on top of it. And on the high level, we have the applications which need to be validated. So in this infrastructure guide, we have been proposed methods of reusing components here. We are validating, or we are qualifying those virtual machines, and then we can treat them as any other hardware and qualify it and install our application on top of it. So we are reusing parts like this infrastructure qualification guidelines. We have other guidelines for how to deal with the uncertainty of a crowd of suppliers in this open source realm. There have been articles in pharmaceutical engineering how to deal with open source software validation. And of course, we have to draw in experts in how to test or do quality assurance in distributed applications. We have timing issues here. Something is done in parallel at different points in this network, and it needs to lead to a defined result. So how do we test this? There are challenges in this. And our group, this special interest group on blockchain validation, tries to find out. We don't have the solution already. We have only the ideas how to get there. And with new ideas coming to validation, to computer software validation, like the new CSA, the new computer software assurance initiative of the FDA that's scheduled for this month, we will have more tools available to tackle this and to try to slice it up in manageable pieces. And of course, we have cloud validation. You mentioned before, we have cloud systems. 10 years ago, everybody said, oh no, cloud, you cannot validate this. And then the QA department got a call from somebody in IT. Oh, by the way, our CFO demanded to go for a cheaper solution. We need to implement cloud, and we have already paid for it. Could you do vendor audit? Could you qualify this? How do we validate this? And this is one of the reasons, having had this experience 10 years ago with cloud computing, to not repeat the same mistake again for this new technology, blockchain. So that was one of the reasons we founded this group, this special interest group in blockchain validation, to try to find solutions before it gets super critical, before somebody comes to the conclusion, oh, this blockchain could affect patient security, could affect product quality, could affect data integrity.
Okay, so that's interesting. So no longer does blockchain seem like some sort of abstract, scary concept to me anymore. You know, it sounds like you have a solution that can solve the issue of trust, is robust, and is capable of solving a lot of issues in not only the life science industries, but also a number of other industries as well. And, you know, with what you've mentioned on, you know, validation, it doesn't sound like it's so impossible to implement a compliant solution. Thank you so much for your time, you know, Edgar. So.
Yeah, on the other hand, you have also things that can help validation, the people doing validation. You have this immutable audit trail built into the blockchain. Data can never be changed. You have this, you have all these good features in the system itself. You can put your certificates of analysis in the blockchain. You can put also your validation proofs in the blockchain, your evidence. Yeah. Okay. Questions?
Thank you to both Justin and Edgar. I hope that we didn't scare people away. But thank you. And I think that it really highlights open conversations that other companies might also be having on validation. So I think that was very insightful. And from the poll we saw earlier, that we are in agreement that there has to be conversations around validation. So with that, I would like to open the floor for questions. We do have one question that came in of validating a blockchain-based system architecture requires qualification of infrastructures and small validation FTRT on some pieces at the level of top layers. Would you say that is correct?
Yeah, basically that's the way we envision it. So at the low level, we have qualification, and at a higher level, we have the validation, of course. And somewhere in between, we are choosing arguments like in the GAMP classification scheme, trying to make an argument of this is somehow standard software, which is validated GAMP category, like GAMP category 1, which is basically doing the same as a qualification. Yeah, you say you set the expectations, and then you do your qualification tests on top of it, and then you say, okay, this base layer of blockchain, wherever I draw the line, is everything below of it is a standard on which I can build upon, on which I can rely, and this is the qualification part. And something on top is then subject to validation. And in the same manner as when I'm using an Oracle database to query data my own, of course I cannot say this is GAMP layered software. If I use it directly, I have to validate it. But if I'm having this Oracle database sitting below, let's say, an ERP system, which is using it, or a document management system, then I'm not concerned about validating Oracle per se, the Oracle database per se, or Microsoft SQL, whatever. It's just a layered system beneath what I see as an end user. So the end user will probably see the application sitting on top, the chargeback application, or the application which gives him the information with which to work further down and establish these point-to-point connections in the mail ledger solution, for example.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question. And we have another question. What about to qualify the blockchain functionality, how blocks contain fingerprints or hash and are linked to another and with the peers? We cannot simply trust that blockchain's good behavior.
Yeah, that's of course the tough part here. When do you call something mature enough to be in this level of, oh yeah, that's standard software. I don't have to look into this anymore. And when is the level of trust not enough, and I have to look at it? And when can I substitute this by some audit? Like I'm doing a vendor audit. When I don't trust what the vendor is doing, then I have to audit him. When I trust the vendor, I can believe, oh yeah, they are doing good quality anyway. So that's one of the questions here. Yeah, when can I trust Bitcoin after 12 years of existence, after this technology being challenged very often in the meantime? And what about Hyperledger, which is just being built, which is not so old? And then, of course, the solutions built on top of this. And then we have, of course, things like these base building blocks of the blockchain. We have this hashing, And if I remember correctly, there has been 2 years ago or so, someone said, "Oh yeah, MD5 is now no longer secure. It has been cracked, or it has been shown that it is possible to crack it up, this hash code." So this functionality, when I have data which is encoded by this hashing function, and when I modify the data, the hash is changing. And now they have proven for some hash functions, yeah, I can change data in the way I want, and then I adjust a bit, and then the hash does not change. And the question is, could this happen with the blockchain, with the base primitives used in blockchain as well? But then this technology is also getting improved. So maybe I can crack the first block in my blockchain in 10 years, because cryptography has advancements, and I can modify this and then modify the following blocks. But it's still secured by block number 1000, which uses the modern technology, which is not crackable. So still, to modify the block in the front row, I need to modify all the following blocks, and it gets harder and harder and harder. It gets harder by the length of the chain in it, and it gets harder by the increased ability of the technology. Yeah, and it adjusts to the technology. Maybe in the start I had 10 computers participating in this network, and they were small computers, standard equipment. Then somebody found out that graphic cards are faster processors for the blockchain. And then somebody built integrated circuits that are specifically tailored to do Ethereum hashing or Bitcoin hashing. But as the technology matures along the way, and the data is still safe in the old blocks there. So even if this changes, I can, at some point in time, I can say, okay, I can now rely on this as being secure, proven by probably experience more than a rigorous proof.
Thank you, Edgar, for your explanation. And then, yes, our attendees are also saying thank you so much for the explanation as well. And as we're coming towards the end of our presentation, we have about 4 minutes. I just wanted to ask if our guest speakers want to share anything else, or anyone else has any general questions that they might like to ask. This would be a good time before we close our webinar. And please feel free to reach out to me as well if you're interested in joining Women in Pharma, or have any other ideas for our team as well. So if anyone else has anything else that they want to add, let us know.
Tanya, I think it was a great conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time as well. And I think we do have, we're getting a lot of positive feedback that everyone really enjoyed the presentation. So we hope to see all of you soon. And if anyone has ideas and want to hear from Suzanne or Edgar or Greg and Justin, again, please let us know, and we would be happy to ask them for their time again if they're free. So with that, I would like to say I hope everyone stays safe and has a really good day. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.